For more than 6 decades, Hollywood has tried to predict when Cher's story would finally end. She survived poverty, a complicated marriage, a bitter divorce, career failures, changing musical trends, and relentless public criticism. Yet every time the world counted her out, Cher came back stronger. She became famous beside Sonny Bono, then proved she could succeed without him. She conquered television, reinvented herself as an actress, won an Academy Award, returned to music, and decades later shocked the world with the global success of Believe. Behind the costumes, photographs, and headlines was a woman who refused to accept Hollywood's limits. But before Cher became an icon, she was simply a young girl with a dream, and a childhood filled with uncertainty, struggle, and determination. Cherilyn Sarkeesian was born on May 20th, 1946, in El Centro, California. Nothing about her early life suggested that she would one day become one of the most recognizable entertainers in the world. Her parents separated when she was still an infant, and her family struggled financially. Her mother, Georgia Holt, dreamed of becoming an actress, while Cher grew up surrounded by uncertainty. The glamorous Hollywood life Cher would eventually experience was still only a distant dream. As a child, however, she was fascinated by movies, music, costumes, and famous performers. She admired Audrey Hepburn and began imagining herself on a stage or movie screen. Cher wasn't simply dreaming about fame, she wanted to perform, she wanted to create, and most importantly, she wanted to become somebody who could control her own future. At 16, she left school and eventually made her way toward Los Angeles. She had little money, she had few connections, and she had no guarantee that Hollywood would ever notice her. But Cher was willing to take the risk. She worked various jobs while searching for opportunities. Then, in the early 1960s, she met a man who would completely change the direction of her life. His name was Sonny Bono. Sonny Bono was working around the legendary producer Phil Spector's Recording World when Cher entered his orbit. At first, Cher worked behind the scenes and eventually became a backing vocalist. For her, this was a turning point. She was finally inside the music business she had dreamed about. But Cher didn't want to remain in the background forever. She wanted her own voice. Cher and Sonny eventually married in 1964, and their professional partnership began developing alongside their personal relationship. Their early attempts at success were not easy. They struggled. Some releases failed. But eventually, they discovered a combination that audiences couldn't resist: Sonny and Cher. Then came the song that changed everything, I Got You, Babe. The song became a phenomenon. Suddenly, the couple was everywhere. Their long hair, unconventional clothes, distinctive personalities, and unusual appearance made them stand out from the polished performers dominating television and radio. Cher's deep, unmistakable voice gave the duo an identity of its own. But something else was happening. The public was beginning to notice Cher. Not just Sonny and Cher, Cher herself. While Sonny and Cher were becoming increasingly successful, Cher's individual identity was becoming stronger. Her solo career developed alongside the duo. Songs such as Bang Bang, My Baby Shot Me Down, proved that she could command an audience without Sonny beside her. But the entertainment industry was changing. By the late 1960s, rock music was becoming louder and more experimental. The musical formula that had made Sonny and Cher famous was beginning to feel less contemporary. Cher wanted to explore new directions. Sonny was more comfortable with the formula that had already worked. Their professional disagreements slowly became personal disagreements. Behind closed doors, their marriage was deteriorating. Yet the public still loved them, and television gave them another chance. Their sarcastic arguments and playful insults unexpectedly became part of their appeal. In 1971, the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour premiered. The show became a huge success. Millions of viewers welcomed the couple into their homes every week. Sonny played the funny husband. Cher became the glamorous, sharp-tongued star. Their daughter, Chastity, also became part of their public image. To millions of viewers, they looked like the perfect entertainment family. But behind the cameras, their marriage was falling apart. By the early 1970s, the relationship between Sonny and Cher had become deeply fractured. Eventually, the illusion could no longer survive. In 1974, Sonny filed for legal separation. Cher followed with divorce proceedings and accused Sonny of controlling aspects of her finances and career. The breakup became a major Hollywood story. Money was involved, professional matters were involved, and custody of their child became another point of conflict. Their marriage officially ended in 1975, but the divorce created something Cher had desperately needed: independence. For years, the public had known her as half of Sonny and Cher. Now she had to prove that Cher alone was enough. And she did. She returned to television with her own variety show. Her fashion became increasingly daring. Her appearance became part of her identity. Cher was no longer interested in following Hollywood's rules about how a female star was supposed to look. She was creating her own rules. But the road ahead would not be easy. Cher's musical career entered periods of decline. Some albums failed commercially. Relationships became complicated. Projects that seemed promising sometimes collapsed. She experimented with disco. Then she tried rock. She even formed the band Black Rose. The project failed badly. Critics mocked her. Many people believed Cher was losing her way. But Cher had developed a remarkable habit. She refused to stay down. When one version of her career stopped working, she created another. And this time, Hollywood opened a completely different door: acting. For years, Hollywood had focused heavily on Cher's appearance. But now she began taking serious, dramatic roles. Her performance in Silkwood changed how audiences viewed her. Instead of simply seeing a glamorous television personality, people began recognizing an actress with genuine dramatic ability. Then came Mask. And then came the role that would permanently change her place in Hollywood: Moonstruck. In 1987, Cher starred in Moonstruck as Loretta Castorini. The character was passionate, funny, emotional, and complicated. The performance proved that Cher wasn't simply a singer who had wandered into acting. She was a serious actress. The performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress. It was one of the greatest turning points of her career. The woman Hollywood had repeatedly underestimated had now reached the highest level of recognition in the film industry. But winning an Oscar wasn't the end of Cher's reinvention. It was only another beginning. She returned to music with a harder rock image. Then came If I Could Turn Back Time. The song became one of the most recognizable recordings of her career. But the music video caused controversy. Cher appeared in a revealing outfit while performing aboard the USS Missouri. Some television networks restricted the video, yet the controversy only made Cher more famous. By this point, she had become more than a conventional celebrity. She had become a symbol of independence. She wore what she wanted. She dated who she wanted. She changed her appearance whenever she wanted. And she refused to let Hollywood decide when she was supposed to disappear. Then came another difficult chapter. In the early 1990s, Cher faced health struggles that affected her ability to maintain the relentless schedule she had once managed. Her career entered another uncertain period. The media began treating her like a star from another era. She appeared in commercials and projects that some critics considered beneath her previous status. Comedy programs turned her into a joke. And once again, people began asking, was Cher finished? It was a question they had asked before. But this time, something extraordinary was about to happen. In 1998, Cher suffered another emotional loss. Sonny Bono died in a skiing accident. Their marriage had ended decades earlier, and their relationship had been filled with painful conflict. But history cannot simply be erased. Sonny had been the man who helped introduce Cher to the professional world that eventually became her empire. His death forced Cher to confront a complicated past. She remembered the good, she remembered the bad, and she publicly acknowledged how important he had been in her life. Then, later that same year, Cher delivered perhaps the greatest comeback of her career. The album Believe arrived in 1998. At first, nobody could know what was about to happen. The title track sounded completely different from much of Cher's earlier work. Its electronic production and heavily processed vocal created a sound that felt modern and futuristic. Then, the song exploded. Believe became a worldwide phenomenon. It reached #1 in numerous countries and introduced Cher to a younger generation that had never watched her television shows or followed her early career. The woman who had become famous in the 1960s had reinvented herself again. This time, she was at the center of electronic pop. The vocal effect used on Believe became enormously influential. Cher had moved from folk pop duets to television, from television to acting, from disco to rock, and now from rock to electronic dance music. Few artists could move across generations like Cher, and she still wasn't finished. During the 2000s, Cher embarked on major tours and established herself as a spectacular live performer. Her farewell tour became an enormous commercial success. But, just like so many moments in Cher's career, the farewell wasn't really goodbye. She continued performing. She later enjoyed successful Las Vegas residencies, proving that audiences were still willing to see her perform decades after her first breakthrough. Then came another unexpected chapter. Cher returned to film and burlesque, combining her acting and musical talents once again. The song, You Haven't Seen the Last of Me, seemed almost like a personal message to everyone who had predicted the end of her career. You haven't seen the last of me, and she meant it. Away from music and movies, Cher became known for challenging social expectations. She continued experimenting with fashion and her appearance. She refused to let age determine what she could wear, how she could perform, or what kind of career she could have. She also remained deeply connected to her family. Her relationship with Sonny Bono became an important part of her personal story. Cher supported Chaz publicly and became an advocate for acceptance and equality. After more than half a century in entertainment, Cher's legacy is almost impossible to define with one title. Singer? Absolutely. Actress? Without question. Fashion icon? Certainly. Television star? Yes. But perhaps the most accurate word is survivor. Cher survived poverty. She survived early fame. She survived a difficult marriage. She survived divorce and public humiliation. She survived career failures. She survived changing musical trends. She survived critics who declared her finished. And she survived an industry that often treated women as though their careers came with expiration dates. Every time Hollywood tried to put Cher into a box, she broke out of it. The young girl dreaming about Hollywood became a backing vocalist. The backing vocalist became half of Sonny and Cher. Half of a famous duo became a solo singer. The singer became a television star. The television star became an actress. The actress became an Oscar winner. The established superstar became a rock performer. The rock performer became a dance pop pioneer. And the veteran artist became a global touring phenomenon. Every transformation came with risk. Some worked, some failed spectacularly, but Cher kept moving. That is why the rare photographs of Cher tell more than a story about fashion or celebrity. They document a woman changing identities across decades while remaining unmistakably herself. Behind every costume was another chapter. Behind every hairstyle was another reinvention. Behind every comeback was another moment when the world underestimated her. Cher's story is not simply about how she became famous. It is about how she repeatedly refused to disappear. And after everything she survived, everything she lost, and everything she rebuilt, one truth remains impossible to ignore. Cher was never just a star. She was a survivor who turned reinvention into an art form. And every time the world thought it had finally seen the last of Cher, she proved them wrong.
If you enjoy this documentary, then like and subscribe our channel. Thank you.